The crowd roars like thunder. The lights flicker with intensity, and the air inside the packed arena is electric. Fans lean forward, gripping the edges of their seats, anticipation crackling in the atmosphere. This is the moment no one thought they'd ever witness, two worlds colliding in a way that defies logic, expectation, and even the very rules of combat sports. On one side stands a man whose name sends shivers down the spines of opponents, a relentless warrior with a hunger for dominance, Khamzat, the undefeated UFC wrecking machine. On the other side, a legend who has ruled the squared circle for decades, a larger-than-life figure whose presence alone commands respect, John Cena, the face of WWE, the man who has defied the odds time and time again. The question on everyone's mind: what happens when unstoppable meets immovable? It all started as a challenge, a throwaway comment during an interview that spiraled into something no one could ignore. Khamzat, known for his fearless approach, made it clear he wasn't just here to take part, he was here to take over. "I'll smash anyone," he had said with that signature smirk, brushing off questions about his next fight. "Wrestling, MMA, street fight, doesn't matter. Even John Cena, he's strong, right? But I take him down too." The internet exploded. Fans debated. Critics dismissed it as hype, and WWE loyalists scoffed at the idea. But Cena? He didn't laugh it off. He stared straight into the camera, that familiar intensity in his eyes, and made one thing clear: if Khamzat wanted a fight, he would get one. The buildup was unlike anything seen before. Two warriors, masters of their craft, but from entirely different battlefields. Cena had spent years proving that strength, heart, and resilience could defy any odds. He had faced giants, monsters, and the most dangerous men in the ring, always managing to rise again, no matter how brutal the beating. Khamzat, on the other hand, was a different breed, an unrelenting storm of aggression, technical brilliance, and sheer dominance. His ability to dismantle opponents with precision had made him one of the most feared fighters in the UFC. But this wasn't the octagon. This wasn't scripted entertainment. This was an unsanctioned battle between two men who had everything to prove and nothing to lose. The night of the fight, the energy in the building was unreal. The moment Cena's music hit, the arena erupted in cheers, a wave of nostalgia and admiration filling the air. He stepped out, eyes locked forward, the weight of the moment clear on his face. This wasn't just about proving himself, it was about defending his legacy, showing the world that he was more than just a performer. Then, the lights dimmed, and a chilling silence took over. The sound of war drums echoed through the speakers, and from the shadows emerged Khamzat. No flashy entrance, no theatrics, just a man on a mission. He walked with purpose, his eyes locked onto Cena like a predator, sizing up its prey. The atmosphere shifted, the cheers turned to murmurs, and for the first time, even Cena's biggest supporters felt the weight of what was about to unfold. The referee stood between them, unsure of how to even enforce rules in a match that had none. No ropes, no scripted moves, no safety nets, just raw, unfiltered combat. Cena, ever the veteran, knew he couldn't let Khamzat dictate the pace. The bell rang, and instantly he exploded forward, locking up with the UFC fighter in an attempt to overpower him. But the moment their hands clashed, it was clear this was different. Khamzat's grip was like steel, his movements calculated, and within seconds, he had Cena in a clinch, driving him backward with terrifying ease. The crowd gasped as the WWE icon struggled to break free, his legendary strength suddenly met with something he had never encountered before. Cena fought back, digging deep into his years of experience, using his size and weight to shift momentum. He threw hammering punches, each one landing with force, but Khamzat absorbed them, unfazed, his expression unchanged. Then, in an instant, he countered a seamless transition that left Cena off balance. Before anyone could process what was happening, Khamzat lifted him off the ground and slammed him down with a force that shook the ring. The impact echoed through the arena, the disbelief on every face telling the story. Cena rolled to the side, gripping his ribs, breathing heavily as he looked up at the man standing over him. For the first time in years, John Cena looked vulnerable. But if there was one thing the world knew about him, it was that he never backed down. With a determined glare, he pushed himself up, the pain evident, but his spirit unbroken. Khamzat smirked, motioning for him to bring it on. The battle had only just begun, and as the crowd's cheers turned into deafening chants, one thing was certain: this was going to be a war like no other. The impact of the slam still reverberated through the arena, but Cena refused to stay down. He clenched his fists, eyes locked onto Khamzat, his body already aching, but his will unshaken. This wasn't just about strength anymore. This was about proving something to himself, to the millions watching, to the legacy he had built over decades. Khamzat took a step back, allowing Cena to rise, a twisted smirk on his face. It wasn't arrogance. It was something more dangerous. It was excitement. The undefeated fighter, accustomed to tearing through opponents with ease, had found something rare: resistance. He wanted to feel that struggle, that war, to see if Cena truly had the heart to stand against him. The fans were divided. Some cheered wildly, rallying behind Cena, willing him to pull off another miracle like he had done countless times before. Others, those who had followed Khamzat's meteoric rise, knew what was coming. They had seen how he dismantled world-class fighters, how he turned strength into weakness and made dominance look effortless. They weren't sure if Cena understood what he had walked into. This wasn't a scripted bout with predetermined winners. This was survival. As Cena steadied himself, flashes of his past battles raced through his mind. He had faced legends, endured pain most men would crumble under, but this was different. The sheer intensity in Khamzat's eyes made it clear this wasn't just another fight. It was a test, a battle of wills between two warriors who had built their careers in entirely different arenas. He had never faced someone quite like this. The weight of that realization hit him hard, but so did something else, a reminder of who he was. John Cena wasn't just a wrestler. He was a fighter, a survivor. Khamzat wasted no time, charging forward with the same relentless aggression that had made him feared in the UFC. His hands moved like lightning, closing the distance in a fraction of a second. Cena braced himself, trying to anticipate the next move, but Khamzat was unpredictable. Instead of going for a strike, he feinted a slight movement that forced Cena to react, and then, with terrifying speed, shot in for another takedown. Cena felt the mat disappear beneath him, the force of Khamzat's grip like a vice crushing his midsection. But this time, he was ready. Twisting his body at the last moment, Cena shifted his weight, using his veteran instincts to sprawl and counter. It wasn't perfect, he still hit the ground, but instead of being controlled, he rolled with the momentum, breaking free before Khamzat could lock him down. The crowd erupted in shock. For the first time, someone had escaped Khamzat's grip without being completely overwhelmed. Cena staggered to his feet, chest rising and falling with deep breaths, and Khamzat let out a low chuckle. The respect was growing between them, though neither would admit it. Cena had proven he wouldn't be taken down easily, and Khamzat had shown that he wasn't just a brute force, he was a tactician, a machine built for war. But something else lingered beneath the surface. For Khamzat, this wasn't just about proving himself against a wrestling icon. There was more at stake. Something deeper. The rumors had been swirling for weeks. Was this fight personal for him? Was there something about Cena, about the world he represented, that ignited a fire beyond competition? No one knew for sure, but the intensity in Khamzat's eyes suggested that this was about more than just sport. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, tensions were rising among those who had put this fight together. Officials from both worlds, MMA and professional wrestling, watched from the shadows, unsure of what they had unleashed. What started as a spectacle, a crossover dream match to captivate audiences, had turned into something else entirely. There was no clear way to control what was happening in that ring. The rules were non-existent, and the possibility of someone getting seriously hurt was growing by the second. Some argued to call it off, to stop the madness before it escalated further, but others saw the numbers, the global attention, the sheer magnitude of what was unfolding. This was history being made, and no one wanted to be the one to end it. Among the spectators, there were also those who had their own stakes in this battle. Some of Cena's longtime rivals were watching closely, hoping to see the legend fall. They had battled him in scripted wars, but this was real. If Cena couldn't survive against Khamzat, it would change everything. On the other side, MMA purists were waiting for Khamzat to prove once and for all that real fighters existed outside the world of sports entertainment. The stakes were higher than ever. But inside the ring, none of that mattered. As Cena and Khamzat circled each other again, breathing heavily, something shifted. It wasn't just about victory anymore. It was about survival. The tension in the air was suffocating, and every movement felt like it carried the weight of 1,000 battles before it. Then, without warning, they both lunged at the same time, colliding in the center of the ring with explosive force. The war was far from over, and no one in the arena or watching around the world could predict what would happen next. The impact of their collision sent a shockwave through the arena, bodies crashing together with raw force. Cena's arms locked around Khamzat's torso, muscles straining as he attempted to overpower the UFC fighter. But Khamzat was like a coiled spring, absorbing the impact and immediately shifting his position, his instincts razor sharp. In a flash, he twisted, using Cena's momentum against him, and the two tumbled violently to the mat in a tangled blur of limbs. The audience erupted as they scrambled for control, the energy in the arena shifting from excitement to something deeper, something primal. This was no longer a spectacle. This was a fight for dominance. Cena dug deep, planting his forearm against Khamzat's neck, leveraging his strength to push back. Sweat dripped from both men as they grappled, neither willing to give an inch. Khamzat snarled, slipping free with a sudden burst of power, repositioning himself like a predator circling wounded prey. But just as he lunged to take Cena down again, something unexpected happened. Cena didn't dodge, didn't brace. Instead, he met Khamzat head-on, catching him mid-movement, lifting him clean off the mat and driving him into the corner with an earth-shattering slam. The crowd exploded, disbelief washing over the faces of even the most hardened MMA fans. Cena had just done the unthinkable. He had outmaneuvered Khamzat in pure combat. But even before the cheers could fully settle, Cena took a step back, watching Khamzat with a look of cautious determination. He knew this wasn't over. Khamzat wasn't the kind of fighter to stay down. He was relentless, and if Cena had learned anything in this war, it was that underestimating him, even for a second, was a mistake. Then, something changed. Khamzat stayed down longer than expected, breathing heavily, his head tilted downward. The energy in the room shifted from electric to uneasy. Cena took a slow step forward, expecting another sudden counter, but Khamzat remained motionless. Referees at ringside exchanged nervous glances, unsure if they should intervene. Then, without warning, Khamzat lifted his head, and for the first time all night, his expression wasn't just focused, it was something darker. There was no smirk, no amusement. Just cold, calculated fury. A shiver ran through the crowd as Khamzat slowly got to his feet. Something in his demeanor had shifted. This was no longer just about proving himself. This was something deeper, something personal. The murmurs in the audience grew as speculation spread like wildfire. What had changed? Was there something else fueling this fight? Then, as if confirming their fears, Khamzat whispered something under his breath, something only Cena could hear. Cena's face twisted in confusion for a brief moment before his expression hardened. Whatever Khamzat had just said had struck a nerve. The tension in the air became suffocating, the kind of silence that comes before a storm. Cena's body stiffened, his fists clenching tighter, his breathing suddenly sharper. It was no longer just a battle of strength or skill, it had become personal for him too. And then, all at once, Khamzat exploded forward with a speed that seemed almost inhuman. He didn't go for a takedown this time. He wasn't looking to grapple. He was out for destruction. His fist lashed out in a blur, and though Cena managed to block it, the sheer force sent him staggering. Khamzat didn't stop. He pressed forward with brutal efficiency, his strikes landing with terrifying precision. For the first time, Cena was on the defensive, struggling to keep up with the relentless onslaught. The crowd's excitement turned into gasps of disbelief. Cena was strong, resilient. But Khamzat was operating on a different level now, fueled by something far beyond competition. Each hit seemed to carry a message, each strike a statement. The lines between sport and personal war had blurred. Cena, though battered, refused to fall. He gritted his teeth, absorbing the blows, waiting for his opening. He wasn't just going to survive this. He was going to fight back. Just when it seemed like Khamzat had him cornered, Cena made his move. With lightning reflexes, he ducked under a vicious strike, spinning behind Khamzat and wrapping his arms around his waist. With every ounce of strength he had left, he hoisted Khamzat into the air, executing a thunderous suplex that sent the entire ring shaking. The impact left both men sprawled on the mat, gasping for breath. But even as they struggled to recover, the real question remained. What had Khamzat said to Cena? And why had it changed everything? The mystery hung over the match like a storm cloud, and the answer, whatever it was, would change everything before this war was over. The arena was at a fever pitch, the energy almost unbearable as both men lay sprawled on the mat, struggling to rise. Every fan watching, whether in the arena or glued to their screens, could feel the weight of the moment. This wasn't just about proving who was the better fighter anymore. There was something unspoken, something deeper lurking beneath the sweat and bruises. Cena clutched his ribs, his breathing heavy but determined, while Khamzat, his body aching from the impact of that suplex, slowly pushed himself up. The tension was suffocating, and the answer to the question hanging over this fight, the one thing that had changed everything, was about to come to light. Cena wiped the sweat from his brow, his eyes locked on Khamzat, not just with focus, but with understanding. That one sentence Khamzat had whispered earlier had cracked something inside him, something that had been buried under years of battle, years of carrying the weight of being the guy. He had spent his whole career proving that no matter the challenge, no matter how impossible the odds, he would always rise. But now, as he stood face to face with a man who had torn through some of the toughest fighters in the world, he realized the truth. He wasn't just fighting Khamzat. He was fighting time itself. Khamzat took a step forward, his expression unreadable, but there was a shift in his demeanor. He wasn't attacking recklessly anymore. He wasn't just trying to win. He was testing something. Cena saw it now. This had never been about disrespect or proving superiority. Khamzat had come here for something else entirely. He wanted to see if Cena, the legend, the icon, still had that fire inside him. He wanted to push him to the absolute limit, to force him to dig deeper than ever before. And in doing so, he had forced Cena to ask himself the question he had been avoiding for years. Was this the moment he finally had to let go? Cena clenched his fists, his body screaming in protest as he forced himself upright. No, he wasn't done. Not yet. He had one last fight left in him. The crowd sensed the shift, their cheers turning into deafening roars as both warriors locked eyes. Then, like two gladiators making their final charge, they lunged at each other with everything they had left. Khamzat struck first, a sharp, brutal right hook that connected with Cena's jaw, snapping his head back. But Cena, digging into every ounce of willpower he had, powered through the pain and retaliated. He scooped Khamzat up in one swift motion, hoisting him onto his shoulders, the attitude adjustment. The entire arena exploded in shock, everyone on their feet. Cena staggered under Khamzat's weight, his body nearly giving out, but with one final burst of strength, he launched him through the air. Khamzat crashed to the mat with bone-rattling force, the ring shaking from the impact. Cena collapsed to one knee, gasping for air. He had done it. He had found his moment, his answer. But as he looked down at Khamzat, something unexpected happened. The UFC fighter, still reeling from the slam, let out a deep, breathy chuckle. Not in mockery, not in arrogance. It was a laugh of acknowledgement, of respect. Slowly, painfully, Khamzat sat up, his face bruised, but his eyes burning with something Cena hadn't expected: gratitude. And then, in a moment that no one saw coming, Khamzat extended his hand. Not as a challenge, not as an act of defiance, but as a warrior offering his respect to another. The crowd fell into stunned silence, waiting to see what Cena would do. The man who had built his career on never backing down, on standing tall no matter what, looked at the hand in front of him. For a moment, everything seemed to slow. Then, with a deep breath, Cena reached out and clasped Khamzat's hand. The eruption of cheers that followed shook the building. It wasn't about winning or losing anymore. It wasn't about WWE's UFC. It was about something bigger. Two men from two different worlds had stepped into the ring to prove something to each other and to themselves. And in the end, both had won. As Cena slowly walked toward the ropes, he turned one last time, looking at Khamzat with a nod of respect. He had found his answer. The fire still burned inside him, but it was different now. This wasn't the end of his story. It was the beginning of something new. And as Khamzat stood in the center of the ring, watching the legend walk away, he knew that no matter how many fights he had won, this night would be the one that changed him forever. The screen faded to black, but the echoes of that battle would live on. Not just as a fight, not just as a match, but as a moment in history.